I'm a real admirer of his work. I first encountered him when I was years ago doing some work on forestry in India. And since then, he's been a real source of inspiration for working with communities, for all his work in ecology, etc. But let me give a more formal introduction as well. So, Dr. Deb is a biologist by training, and he got his doctorate in ecology from Calcutta University. He's also been a fellow at the University of California, Berkeley, as a Ford Foundation Fellow and also a Fulbright Fellow later on in 2009. What's unique about Debal's work, I think, is that he's developed the seed bank Vrihi, which is a community living rice seed bank, and that's going to be the um, subject of his talk today on how sort of this folk seed bank can become a site of resistance to seed capitalism, the title of his talk. But he's also dabbled in many other adjacent subjects, so to speak, including work on sacred groves, on sacred ponds, on conservation, forest ecology, ecological economics. He's also written a book, uh, Beyond I can't even pronounce it, Beyond Developmentality, Constructing Inclusive Freedom and Sustainability, that has been published by EarthScan Routledge. So I think it's a real example of how you can span work at the very grassroots, which is what many of us do here, and also be publishing in the highest level journals as a scientist. So welcome, Dr. Dev, for this. What we're going to do as usual is speak, Dr. Dev will speak for about 40 minutes, introducing his work. And then we have Dom Glover, who's a fellow here at IDS, giving a few discussants' comments, and then we'll open it up to Q&A as usual. We have a large online audience as well, so Kieran is going to help me manage the questions from the online audience. So with that introduction, let me hand over to Dr. Dev.
Okay.
Over to you.
Yeah, I think
you have
speak with this. Yeah. So in this short small hall, I believe I'm audible to everyone. Okay. So the title actually was suggested by our friend Dominic. He actually wanted me to be explicitly political about this one, because he knows that about the community seed banks and the community resistance to the state authorized seed control and agricultural control. So this is exactly the case where we started. So when we control over seeds and agroecology, let's begin with, I understand most of you are not biologists. Oh, sorry. So I'll just begin with a very basic, some evolutionary biological understanding of how these cultivated crops and their seeds originated. Essentially, every single domesticated crop that we eat today all over the world, and every single animal, domesticated animal, for meat, for eggs, for milk, for wool, whatever we do it, were created, I repeat, created by humans during the Neolithic era. Created in the sense, none of them existed in the world until they were created by these humans. That means the species were completely new. They never existed. Beginning with the dog, which were domesticated about 17,000 years, Canis familiaris, the species never existed until that was created in 17,000 years ago. It was domesticated by a process of artificial selection, not natural selection. So all these domesticated crops and animals came into being not by God, not by force of natural selection, but entirely by artificial selection. It's such an important thing that before the third edition of Darwin's Origin of Species, he actually published a 1,000-page tome that is called evolution of domesticated animals and plants by means of artificial selection. It was such an important one, but very unfortunately, that is not in the syllabus in our ministry. So people don't even remember that it was a role of humans, early humans, in creation of these. Now, with this background, it shows that that's genius of these. All of these, the crop plants. I'm actually aiming at all just a few of these snapshots. There are a total of 220 crops that's been domesticated in the world, all over the continents. And this is a time of domestication. So the last plant that was domesticated was about 3,000 years ago, tea. And after that, about the same time, was coffee. The last animal that was domesticated was European bunny rabbit. Again, 3,000 years ago, roughly. Now, since that time, we have sent rockets and spacecraft beyond our solar system. We have exploded all kinds of nuclear weapons. We have all this artificial intelligence, all of this. We have not been able to add one single species to the list of domesticates over these last 3,000 years. So we have forgotten the art and science of domestication and the selection of species of domestication, but because we call that not science, pre-science and all of this. Rather, we actually celebrate a science which has destroyed all this domesticated biota, especially the varieties of crops, as modern science. I mean, this is the species-wise. For each species, again, humans have all kinds of varieties or breeds, like the dog as a species, but we have 23,000 breeds of dog all over the world. 23 breeds, beginning with this Chihuahua, which is a small one that can fit in my pocket, to Borzoi, which is a small cow size, all belong to the same species. That's genius of genetic diversity that was created by humans again. So for crops like rice or wheat or different kinds of millets, each different variety was created by selecting different kinds of properties. It could be taste, aroma, cooking time, color, pest resistance, salt tolerance, and all of these kind of things, morphological, agronomic, cultural things, color, taste, aroma, everything was according to the preference of the breeders. And we created all of these kinds of crops, so that rice alone is the champion of this, the genetic diversity. In India alone, this was documented in 1970, used to have 110,000 varieties of rice. And so on and so forth. All these 20,000, 10,000, all of these, just a snapshot. I'm not going to show all the 200 varieties, 200 crops. But since 1970, I mean, in the beginning of the Green Revolution in 1965, just by 30 years afterwards, we have lost majority of this germplasm. And today, all over the Indian subcontinent, that is India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, all taken together, the total number of varieties which are still existing is not more than 6,000. So this genocide of bringing down this number to 6,000 is not talked about. We consider that's progress. That is great science. The science behind creation of these over 10,000 years in the past is not considered scientific. Now, this is what I'm talking about this now. Why was this all the same farmers and the breeders who had created all of this enormous diversity, why did they lose it? The only answer is because they were promoted, they were asked to abandon those varieties by the agricultural development institutions, the universities, agricultural department, Ministry of Agriculture, and seed industry. The seed industry, you have to make this all of these kind of things in the variations. I mean, this is a very recent paper that was also this in the artificial selection by farmers, not by natural selection. And then, so all the crop planters, just to repeat, just to drive home this, that they were all developed by farmers, maintained by farmers, and distributed by the farmers free of cost, open exchange system, until the advent of the Green Revolution. The advent of the Green Revolution is a watershed when open exchange of seed farmer to farmer stopped. and was replaced with seed industry and seed business. Until that, nobody in the world actually bought seeds. There was trade always. So Roman Empire received basmati rice from India, for example, or South America, South Africa actually received this cabbage and cauliflower free of cost from East Europe. That was the place of origin. There was not a single individual or a company who charged for that kind of seed. Okay, trade was there, of course, but not proprietary seed business. That was the beginning of in 1965 with the advent of the Green Revolution. So the farmers actually did not need that, because this is just one recent study in the Philippines in 3 districts. It's a very recent one, and even it's in 2012. Before 1970s, each of these, these are the variety, the seed, these are the districts in the Philippines. Each of these districts used to have about 200, 500, 400 varieties of rice. We are talking only of rice here. Today, we have instead of 200, there are just about 44 left. Here's 49 left, and so on. But all these, how did these farmers acquire the seeds? So these are the ones inherited, in the family. Seed exchange between farmers, neighboring farmers, not just within the village, but also outside other villages. Gift from fellow farmers. You go to a friend or your in-laws, and the in-laws, give you a gift. Look, this is a very nice aromatic variety. So, and, uncle gives to the nephew, for example, gifts, and then fellow farmers, and then organizations and institutions like, research institutions in Philippines, the IRRI, they have also provided some of these. If you eliminate these ones, all of these were the customary exchange and gift economy, which actually bolstered and continued for thousands and thousands of years for cultivation of all these varieties. So it was primarily and essentially a gift economy governed by the farmers themselves, the communities themselves over centuries and centuries. And they were the custodians of all this genetic diversity. They were the scientists who maintained the genetic uniformity of each variety, so that for thousands of years, centuries and centuries, none of these varieties got mixed up. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the Indian varieties like basmati. I think that's commonly known to anyone. But if you go to the market today, majority of this, the mixture in the packets, the basmati, you'll get no aroma. Basmati in Indian name, which actually means basmati. Bas is fragrance, aroma. Now, basmati without fragrance is unthinkable, but this is exactly what's happening today, because the genetic purity is not maintained. Because that knowledge, that art or skill of maintaining genetic purity, which was ensconced in this, the farmers' tradition, is disappeared, because it's been replaced by the expertise, external expertise of the scientists and seed corporations. This Indian state, Nepal, Philippines, and all of these are all, again, different districts. And these are the species, these are the varieties which are still maintained. This is very ironical and very sad to share with you, because these are the studies that I have made myself. The same place, just about 30 years ago, this used to have 122. Now it's 63. In Koraput, it was 1,200. Can you believe it? And this is one part of the Jaipur tract, which has been acknowledged by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, not only for that, but because of this, the rice germplasm diversity. Now it is only 98, and so on. And only the single reason is takeover of this genetic diversity and agricultural techniques and technology by research institutions and corporate sector. So, in fact, that was changed because with the Green Revolution approach, the first article of this new creed of agricultural development is high yield, nothing else. So it doesn't matter with aroma, nutrition, adaptation to pests, adaptation to the climatic change, and all of these, nothing matters. It's only high yield. And that actually changed the entire paradigm of the traditional system of seed development. So that's what these authors actually call a radical amendment to that kind of agricultural agenda. So despite this, the brouhaha about green revolution and increase in food security, so-called food security, secured food security, and all this, FAO itself has this publication which acknowledges after 60 years of the green revolution, we have not yet developed a single high-yielding variety of rice anywhere in the world which is perfectly adapted to upland with no irrigation, rain-fed lowland, which is even inundated to about 5 feet, 3 feet, 10 feet deep water, and coastal saline farms like entire Sundarbans and all of this. Any kind of cyclone, there's a seawater incursion, and the entire land goes out of production overnight. So we have not yet developed one single high-yielding variety in those three marginal conditions. So then where is the high-yielding variety? Where is the green revolution in those marginal areas? And perhaps you know the statistics all over the world of all the arable land, about 36% of arable land, total arable land is marginal, either upland or flooded, seasonally or permanently, or coastal saline. So of this 36, at least this 36% of this arable land, we don't have successful green revolution seeds surviving anywhere because it's not yet developed. We are still what the scientists call gene mining. We are exploring these, mining genes from different other things. Could be insect, could be snake, whatever. But we have not yet been developed, been successful in those, So because of that violence of the green revolution, it's actually named green, but it's actually quite bloody red. And that's what Vandana Shiva's article says. And so we have this from 110,000 varieties. We have just about 6,000 left. And no more than, this was 7,000. Actually, unfortunately, this was just about 2 years ago. The recent one is just over 2 years. We have lost another 1,000, according to ICAR's report. Anyway, and so that's the agricultural modernization. So it's not only the decimation of this genetic diversity, but also the agricultural systems of production. So the number one was that there was the polyculture system is now totally replaced with monoculture. Okay, so rice and miles and miles of rice fields, and also sequential things. Is when in the same field we used to have rice. Before rice, there will be some oil seed. After rice, there will be vegetables, and so on and so forth. Now we have rice after rice or wheat after wheat after wheat. Whether it's Mexico or Punjab, it's the same scenario. And then we get this, the other habitual practice has been changed. Now the farmers are habituated and inculcated into procuring all the seeds from the centralized seed supply from the government or seed industry. So every single seed, like in UK, you don't get any of these seeds from the farmers. Any seed that you want to grow, you have to get it from the market, and which is supplied by seed industry, not even the government. And throughout Europe, the UPOV system, UPOV, the farmers are not allowed to conserve their seeds, and that's punishable offense. Okay, and this is exactly the same model that's been, the WTO is promoting with the green box policy. In USA and Canada and Mexico, you cannot keep these seeds unless it's certified and licensed by the government to procure from from the industry. India, mainly South Asia and Southeast Asia, this is largely outside that UPOV sense. But here the farmers are habituated and trained, inculcated into believing this kind of, that's the only reliable supply of seeds. So they have to do it, even if there is no law to prevent it. And the result is that the continuous reliance on this seed supply, this has actually eliminated the perceptual need of conserving the seeds, because you get money, you buy it. What's the point in conserving? What's the point in maintaining genetic purity? If you lose it, you just buy it. The point is that you cannot buy any of those traditional varieties seeds. That's the reason that thousands and thousands of varieties get lost within just a couple of decades. And now you have to rely on this just handful of the supply of high-yielding modern varieties. That's the process. So, which means the green revolution has two. One is this replacement of the traditional seeds on one hand. The other one is promoting the seed market. So the result is that this replacement of these seeds with traditional modern varieties is loss of all this knowledge of seed keeping, not only the hardware but also the software of the knowledge where to apply, which land it is appropriate for the growing this variety of seed, when to grow it is, when to harvest, what you should grow before or after that particular variety is all lost. Okay, and then the seed exchange custom is also lost. So one is the scientific aspect, the agronomic aspect. The other is cultural aspect. The communitarian ethos, the community exchange between farmer to farmer, family to family, village to village, is all destroyed, replaced with the seed industry, seed marketing. This is just another one. These are the left-hand column. They all lead to corporate profit. Okay, monoculture, agrochemicals. Cannot grow any of the modern varieties without agrochemicals, pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides, and then of course now it's transgenics. Okay, the GM crops, BT cotton and Roundup Ready and all the Roundup Ready. By anyway, it's not a toxic thing. I mean, for Roundup is herbicide, herbicide tolerant, which means this is grown in order to enhance the sale of herbicide, not for the benefit of the crop, not for the health of the consumer, not for the yield, but only to enhance the sale of herbicides so that you kill the weeds, the so-called weeds. So it's mainly corporate profit. The other side is exactly opposite. Crop genetic diversity, habitat diversity within the same farmland. You have upland, medium land, lowland, some different kinds of patches, small bushes, big trees. These are all leading to food security. Now, all of these has negative impact on all of these. So that's the result of centralization and corporatization of modern agriculture. As long as these were in the hands of the farmers' community, this was always taking this food security for thousands of years, so much so that the population, the global population has increased to that extent, not because of the Green Revolution. In fact, another one is that the food security of India is so high that now, because of the higher productivity, there's a enormous, unprecedented event of farmer suicide by thousands. According to the government's own estimate, the farmer suicide figure runs to 50,000 so far in the last 10 years. If you count from 1999, when the first year of farmer suicide after BT cotton cultivation, in one single district of Warangal in Andhra Pradesh, in the southern state of India, that was in the first year, it was 2,000 farmers, mass suicide. Now, if your food security leads to the producer's own suicide, do we call that food security? And even last year, Odisha farmers committed suicide because after the harvest of tomatoes, they found it was 10 paisa per kg in the market. What would be in British currency, 10 paisa? No? 10 paisa in India. What would be?
Less than 1 penny.
Not 1 pence. No, it's 80 times. It's 0.8 pence for a kg of tomato. So that is even abysmally lower than the cost. Yeah, than the cost of this. The even loading, unloading, and uploading, or even harvesting costs. So they committed suicide last year in Odisha. Anyway, now, why is this genetic diversity so important and with this community? Because each of these agronomic factors and the cultural, like culinary properties, and the nutritional ones like nutrients, like vitamins, different kinds of vitamins, minerals, and medicinal uses, they are all to be found in those traditional varieties, none in the so-called high-yielding variety. Where it is IR36, IR72, we have actually made these experiments also. So that's why when all of this consideration was behind the formation of WIHI that we established in 1997, which is currently Asia's largest rice seed bank, open seed bank. We consider it's a shorthand for seed community center. It's actually seed bank, but we don't sell anything, not a single grain. It's completely free on open exchange. If someone cannot give anything in exchange, the only consideration is that you take this one, but you have to give it free to another farmers, if not to us. So we don't make any kind of commerce with that. And then currently we are conserving on the same farm 1,480 varieties of rice every year. We have to cultivate them every year, because otherwise they will die. They cannot survive if it's not cultivated. And if it's not cultivated in the minus 20 degrees Celsius and below 4% of moisture content, you cannot maintain them. The seeds will die in 2 years. So we are mandated to cultivate every single variety every year and then maintain the genetic purity of each population of the land races. These are the different nurseries which will be transplanted later. So, and we have in this collection of VHI, we have 16 salt-tolerant varieties. And salt-tolerant, by this salt-tolerant, it's not just salinity, but the salinity of seawater. So they can give sufficient yield in seawater itself. And that strong thing is not yet achieved by any of these. 17 flood tolerant, and whether it's seasonal or permanent flood condition, up to 10 feet to 11 feet deep water, you have to harvest that rice on board a canoe. Of course, you cannot get drowned after while harvesting that 11 feet deep water. So on board the canoe, you get this. We have this 73. 11 drought tolerant variety in this, in the sense that these varieties do not require a single drop of water for irrigation after the first transplanting. So after the first transplanting, one spell of rain is enough. Zero rain or scanty rain, it doesn't matter. It will give it. So these are the enormous, genetic diversity and amazing properties of all these, silver-rich things. So these are just examples of the salinity tolerant varieties, drought tolerant, flood tolerant, submergence tolerant. Submergence means that they don't go up on the surface. They keep submerged, and when the water subsides, it survives. After 3 weeks, when any other plant would die within the first week, but they survive as if, they keep their, the respiration, stop the respiration suspended for 3 weeks. And so that's how we are spreading this VHI. There's one first circle of exchange, VHI to the farmers directly. Then the second circle, farmer to farmer. Then there's a third circle and so on. So we cannot keep track of all of this. So far, up to the second circle that we have documented so far, is about 17,000 farmers all in 12 states. Over the past 20 years, we have documented. And we have given this more than 1,000 varieties of seeds to 17,000 farmers. Now I'm just sharing you some of my prides, treasures that we have rescued from extinction. This is the only variety. What's your idea? In each of the spikelet, how many rice kernels, how many rice can you get? 1. That's biologically true everywhere. Here, each spikelet contains 3 grains. Okay. When I showed this to our National Gene Bank and IRI, they said, you being a scientist, how can you say that this is a monocotyledonous seed? Rice is monocotyledon, that means single embryo seed. How can it get three embryos? So then I showed this photograph. They said, it's a doctored photograph. I might have, with a blade and chiseled all those grains and then thrust them to take this photograph. Then I showed them this grain. They picked up this random grain and saw these 3, and then they jumped out of the chair. Can you please give us this? I said, let the farmers talk some more of these folk tales. I'm not entitled to give you this. Anyway, but these, now we have published, this is the 20th year, we have published the entire genome, rice genome mapping. We have not yet been able to identify the gene which is responsible for triplication of this embryo or the ovary. Last year, I published that one. We identified it. It took me 20 years after this discovery. But the farmer who had discovered this, who had created this, was an illiterate man or a woman. I don't know, the man or woman. But she didn't have any idea about DNA, protein, enzyme, and all of this, but he achieved it. Okay, and that's our indigenous knowledge. So this is just a visual representation of this 1,000. You cannot show you all the 1,000 varieties and all the properties. You cannot guess what's the other properties excepting the color and size and shape. But just to give you an idea, this one is a deep water variety, which survives in 11 feet deep water and then goes up another foot to give yield the one. This one, the second one, is a drought tolerant, just the opposite. Doesn't require a single drop of irrigation. This one is the world's narrowest, thinnest rice grain. Okay, this one, you see this in these are called the sterile lemma. Okay, each rice grain has. This sterile lemma has outstretched even the length of the rice itself, like wing. And there's only one single farmer who's still growing it very proudly, that I am the only farmer who has this particular character. Nobody else in the world has. And I actually encourage this. I reestablish this pride of value. Value in our case, in VE and all of these, is not the price. The economists, perhaps you know that there's a saying that to an economist, everything has a price. Okay, and to the other place, every price has a value. Every price has things. All of these kind of confusing things. Here we actually reinstate the original meaning of value. The English dictionary, the first meaning of value is significance, importance, value of a child, value of my lover. Okay, it's not a price tag. Okay, so that value, we are recuperating that sense of value, not the price tag. And that's how these farmers most of these are actually grown by one single farmer or two farmers who are really proud of the value that they are maintaining. Now about the micronutrients, just a snapshot. We published in Current Science and then another American Chemical Society journal subsequently. We examined 550 rice varieties from our collection so far published. It's continuing. Of these, this bottom line, this one, is modern genetically modified iron fortified rice. And according to their report, IRRA and Monsanto jointly published it. They said this is the third generation iron fortified rice containing 8.9 millimeter per kg. So if you consume 1 kg of rice, you get 8.9 millimeters, let's say 9 milligram of iron. Now compare this with any of these. Compared with 9 milligram, we have 40, 60, 30, 130, 150, and all of these. Okay. And not a single dollar was invested in developing those varieties by those unknown, unnamed scientists we call farmers. Okay. Now, this is the result of those centuries of farmers' experiments. And these are the best solution to iron deficiency, anemia, etc. That's a commonsensical, that you promote the market, these varieties rather than this. But common sense is, I know, very uncommon among the policymakers. Therefore, they promote this. So you have to buy at 200 rupees a kg if you get anemia, not these. You abandon them. That's progress. Otherwise, GDP will not grow. We have discovered the only rice in the world with silver. Every single rice grain has silver, 15.9 ppm. And we published this image of atom by atom deposition of silver on different layers of the rice. Okay. And now this is a fancy, we didn't actually go for finding silver and gold. That was not our agenda. We were simply, examining this with the atomic spectroscopy about the heavy metals. We found a spike only with this variety. We made multi-location trials and different kinds of injecting silver with many other hundreds of varieties. That's the only variety that was containing this, consistently. And very interestingly, the name of this variety is Garib Shal, which literal translation is poor man's rice. Garib Shal. So we are waiting for another Begar Shal, Begar variety. We must get gold subsequently. So the poor man's variety is that. What we later discovered is that when I collected this one, the passport data shows that this variety was actually used by traditional tribal people for treatment of any kind of gastroenteric diseases, any infection. So diarrhea, dysentery, amoebiasis, giardiasis, any kind of gastroenteric infection, you get one plate of meal or this rice and it's cured. That's their traditional one. Now we understand why. The silver nanoparticles, we have also experimented in another paper. These silver nanoparticles are very effective in killing any kind of gut microbes, any gut microbes. Okay, so whether it's Giardia, the protozoa, Entamoeba, the protozoa, or other microbes, bacteria and others, they'll immediately get killed. We now know that this is not a folk story. It is actually happening. They did not know whether it was silver or any other thing. It's our duty to prove it, and we verified it. Now, this was, again, their discovery, not mine. And with this, the micronutrient thing, when we are talking about food security, we actually, very conveniently, the policymakers never mentioned nutritional security. Okay? So you cram your belly, your stomach with McDonald's, as the McDonaldized word, and Coca-Cola, you say you are well fed. Now we understand that's actually not nutritious, right? A nutrient or one nutrient, you don't get this metal, this vitamin, and so on and so forth. So we are also focusing on the nutraceutical property. The ceutical part is this. Is out of 500 varieties we examined, we discovered 42 varieties of rice, traditional rice varieties, which contain two essential fatty acids, which are found only in human mother's milk. Only in mother's milk, which are essential for development of the brain of the infants, the cognitive development. Now, cow's milk also has it, but because the cow's milk is boiled before feeding, it actually loses those, it breaks down. It's because it's the mother's milk, which is not cooked, it's not processed, so it's directly consumed. It retains those, and that helps. Now, we found for the infants which have no mother, or the mother has problem in milk production, whatever, then the only alternative is the artificial feed, infant feed, which is devoid of these. So we recommended these 42 rice variety, which contains exactly those two. We don't know why mammals' milk and these rice varieties have exactly those two. That's an evolutionary history. But these are the wonderful, it's not, we have discovered it so recently, but for centuries, 10 out of these 42 that we have discovered, all these 10 varieties were in folklore, it was always mentioned that this is very good for children's growth, children's intelligence, so on. So we give this kind of trainings in this rice characterization to maintain the genetic purity, give to the farmers and the scientists. And now we have also replicated these gene banks in different parts of the country, different states of India. And also in Bangladesh and Nepal, we have established, we have given the seeds, we have given the training, how to maintain the genetic gene banks and to maintain the genetic purity, all of these. And one of the NGOs my friend is also familiar with, whom we assisted. And so not only the seeds, but with sustainable agriculture, the bottom line is zero dependence on external inputs. So external inputs, not only for the seeds, that was the first thing, but also for no other fertilizers, pesticide, compost, herbicide, water, pump sets, for example, and fossil fuel. If you get all of this dependence on zero, even microcredit is zero, bank loan is zero, external expertise is zero for any of these, and of course the materials and energy, until that is achieved, your farm is not sustainable. This is exactly what we are demonstrating over the past 26 years on Basudha Farm, and giving trainings to all the farmers. So I invite you on this, whenever you find chance, please visit us. That's our Basudha Farm. Thank you. Sorry, I perhaps have exceeded my time.
Thank you, Debal. Is this working? So that was really fascinating, and I know his talk is full of very scientific things, but it shows that when you have the evidence, which is well published in high level journals, you can actually make an argument that can have some traction with policymakers. I now invite Dom to give some comments on this work that Debal has presented. And then we'll open up for questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anu, and thank you, Debal, for a very interesting presentation. I was recalling over lunch the first time I met Debal, which was a memorable day for me a long time ago in 2012. I was in Odisha, and I heard from another mutual acquaintance, who some of you may know, Shambhu Prasad, that Debal was in Puri on the coast, and I travelled from Bhubaneswar to Puri. Unfortunately, I had the wrong number for Debal, and I spent almost the whole day hanging around in Puri, dialing, leaving voice messages, and getting no response. And eventually, we made contact. I discovered that Debal was staying in a youth hostel, and the youth hostel had a curfew, but we sort of begged for special permission so that I could sneak in while they were eating their evening meal. And I had my first conversation with Debal, which was in about 2012. And then I was ushered out of the gate, and they locked the gate behind us, behind me, I should say, for the more recently, Debal and I were discussing community seed banks, and my aspiration to do some more work along those lines. I'll come back to the point in a moment. But I thought that that was a really interesting and thought-provoking presentation because it touched on so many things. So I'm not going to attempt to comment on it all, but I just wanted to pick up on some of the points that Debal made very early in the presentation to do with the process of domestication and the process of traditional plant breeding, plant varietal selection, and the maintenance and the creation and then the maintenance of these traditional varieties with different characteristics that are locally adapted. Some of the earliest research I did in my career was all about genetic modification. And for a long time, the biotech industry, the agribusiness companies, and some of their cheerleaders in the science community and in the sort of public commentariat, they like from time to time to trot out the line that there's a continuity between domestication and traditional plant varietal selection and scientific breeding and then genetic modification. And you'll hear it very often. It's more of a propaganda point, to be honest, than something you'd hear coming from a scientist. But it's really common. And of course, you can maintain that illusion only if you stay within very narrow sort of guide wires of a scientific discourse. If you're talking purely about the mixing of genes, crossing of varieties, then you can say, yeah, okay, there is some sort of continuity between molecular breeding and traditional breeding. But actually, once you understand that the social, the scientific, the economic, the financial, the institutional settings in which these things take place, then they are entirely different things. They are completely incomparable entities, the traditional varieties and the molecular varieties. I'm thankful, but also slightly jealous that another acquaintance of mine and a co-author published a paper all about precisely why this argument of continuity between traditional domestication and breeding, genetic modification is nonsense. So I can give you the reference if you like. But Debal touched on all of that and about the importance of in situ conservation. And what in situ conservation really means is not merely an agroecological argument that you need to maintain this genetic, this germplasm in a natural setting, so to speak, in a certain kind of soil, in a certain topography, in a certain climatic condition, but it's also to do with the circulation in a human community, a community of practice, a community of knowledge, maintaining and constantly refreshing, replanting, reharvesting, and maintaining these genetic lines is something which requires a whole culture behind it. And once that culture starts to disappear, if the habits change, if the norms change, if the market incentives change, then some of these knowledge and practices disappear, and then so do the entities that were created by those knowledge and practices. And sometimes at a hidden cost to our society, because we have varieties that are nutritionally diverse and possibly have some medicinal characteristics, nutritional characteristics, that they disappear, and maybe we haven't even noticed they disappear because we haven't been doing genetic screening. And that leads me to the final point that I want to comment on, and also leads into a sort of a question which I would love Debal to expand upon a little. So this reflects back on the conversation that Debal and I were having a few months ago. What I find really intriguing about Debal's work is that as sort of a scientist who publishes high-quality scientific papers in peer-reviewed journals, and also as an activist and a trainer and advocate, he combines a really interesting depth of skills. And in particular, you talked a lot about Vrihi, the let me call it the community seed bank for want of a better term, but also the Basuda farm, where you multiply the seeds. And you have this laboratory where you do some molecular analysis and nutritional analysis. And that combination, I think, is really interesting because many of us in the room and maybe online will be familiar with community seed banks. And some of them are really rudimentary setups. They will, if you actually go and look for these community seed banks in the field, you might find in a village there's a shack somewhere with some bottles and jars and tins on a shelf, and they're not necessarily, these accessions to these seed banks are not necessarily very well cared for, very well stored, or very well documented. And they might not really have a sort of systematic mechanism for keeping the seed in circulation, for exchanging it, for passing it to other villages or other valleys where seeds might be planted. And then you get some that are a little bit more sophisticated than that. But this model, which I think Debal represents, is a really interesting one where, with the combination of the farm, the community seed bank, and the laboratory, it seems to me, and this is my question for Debal, what is the potential to bring together the best of molecular science and genetic science and the insights of that advanced genetic and molecular science, to combine it with the ownership of the germplasm by the farmers and community themselves, so that the communities might choose to recombine that genetics in different ways, to preserve different varieties, to circulate them to maybe new parts of the landscape, new parts of the country, maybe to other communities in other countries, as a way to advance, as it were, on 2 feet, not only with the traditional practices of seed selection and that have existed for thousands of years, but also with the best of modern science as well. So I'll leave my comments there. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Very interesting question to Debal, but I'm not going to let you answer it now. I'm going to open the floor to questions, and also to, if there are questions from our online audience. Thank you very much. So while people in the room are thinking, maybe, is there anything from the online audience? Not yet. Okay. So if anyone has a question or a comment that you want to pose to Debal, very welcome. Yes, go for it. Yeah. You have to take the mic because we have an online audience.
I was really intrigued when you showed us that chart, which showed that the GMOs have a very small micronutrient component compared to the indigenous varieties, which are very high levels of iron and other stuff. I wanted to understand what are the reasons or what are the barriers to scaling the indigenous varieties?
What are the values?
The barriers.
Barriers of scaling the indigenous varieties, because if they have such great value, corporates mostly have a great marketing machine that can actually run with such attractive information and sell more. So why aren't they doing that? Is it because of cost? Is it because it's not feasible? It cannot be done at scale? Why isn't it being scaled?
A very shorthand answer is, should I answer now or should I first take questions?
Questions now? Why don't you start answering?
Okay.
And then raise your hand if you have a question.
A very shorthand answer is that GDP growth. GDP growth. Yeah, I mean, if it is totally, on the margins, periphery of this, mainstream economy, and the farmers get the solution to iron deficit, for example, okay, or vitamin deficit, and so on, which is totally decentralized solution, and it's not sold on the market by any corporation, I mean proprietary corporation, okay, it's totally wide banded, then GDP does not grow. That's one reason there's thousands and thousands of varieties that we already showed this, the iron rich, zinc rich, and vitamin rich varieties, and so on and so forth, which are patently absent in any of the modern high yielding varieties. It's full of starch, no doubt, and yield. That's the primary focus, is yield of starch, nothing else. So in order to get that one, then you need to inculcate this genetic engineering to get 1 grain of, 1 gram of or milligram of iron. We gave you this example. I didn't show you this one in that slide. I think we can go back to that one. The last line of this, the iron and zinc one, there is one 18-letter name of the rice variety which was developed by IRRI and Monsanto, which has, after the 3rd generation iron fortified rice, which contains, you show that one, 8.9 ppm, while with zero investment, you get 200 times, 50 times, 20 times higher iron content. Okay. Now, why is it that that's not promoted, but the Monsanto's rice is promoted? Because GDP does not grow. That's the only answer. Why people don't even know that we have already discovered, we have published in frustrated academic journal, the existence of 180 rice varieties which contains 15 times higher iron than the so-called, this long name. Of course, why is this large name? Well, it required about $20 million investment. It deserves a long name, right? But Ketu and others, these tiny names, contains 20 times higher that iron content, but it doesn't yield to GDP growth. That's why it's never discussed, even after publication. So that's the main reason, So it does not yield GDP growth.
I think
that's the
question is, if I can rephrase your question, why is it that companies are not taking this material and
they are
promoting it, and what effects does that have?
The only reason is that all the varieties that are corporatized, whether it's IR36 or there are hybrid varieties. The farmers have to replace the seeds every 2 years at the most. Otherwise, you get one and you cultivate for generation after generation. There's no profit. But these traditional varieties, all these 1,400 varieties that we're conserving, you can go on cultivating for centuries and centuries across a generation. But in that case, GDP does not grow because money doesn't change hands. That's the only reason. So whether it's vitamin rich or iron rich or whatever, once it is the corporates actually take over, they cannot make this one. The moment you hybridized, these are all some very, I'm not willing to get into the very complicated discussion of genetics. Very simplified expression is that every single character, like iron fortification, iron rich content of this, or zinc, etc., involves more than 23 genes. Now, any kind of hybridization disrupts that one, and it doesn't make this. Even this, the aroma. One single outcrossing with any other variety, it loses the aroma. That's why basmati, you get all these packets and 90% of them have lost aroma. That's the reason. But you cannot maintain the genetic purity in the corporatized seeds. You have to replace it every year. Otherwise, GDP doesn't grow. If you stop buying or selling.
Are you essentially saying that hybrid seeds have to be replaced, but the indigenous can actually run on for a long time? But even in that case, national interest would say that you would want indigenous stuff to grow because you can export more and put more money in the hands of farmers. So from a national income perspective, wouldn't that be a more politically salient move rather than letting corporates sort of do that? Because the nation state would have greater interest in the indigenous stuff. And the corporates are under their rules. So
that's the lure, that if you get this higher production, you get more money. That was the lure by which this one. But what happens is that After this, the second green revolution that it was introduced over the last 20 years, you just consider this, the farmer suicide. Over these 10,000 years of cultivation, there was no farmer suicide for farming purpose, farming reasons. But over the last 20 years, in India alone, the farmer suicide is skyrocketed because of the second green revolution, deeper green revolution, and so on and so forth, at the cost of the farmers' lives, simply because I gave you this example. The tomato was 10 paisa per kg. Okay. In British currency, it doesn't even, it's not visible. Okay. It's 0.8 cent, okay, per kg. The rice itself was, 2 rupees a kg, while the expenditure for growing rice is at least 200 times higher. So what should the farmers do? That if that is the meaning of green revolution and food security, where the food producers themselves commit suicide, then what is insecurity? It's worse than sending them in the battlefield. So that's the reason. Okay. So the brouhaha and the myth of food security is completely gone awry. There's no food security. It's a complete insecurity. And now our Indian government, despite all this brouhaha, is importing seeds from Singapore and China. Then what's the meaning of food security? I just give you one, I think it'll answer many other questions as well. It's a related one. Perhaps, in Bengal, a province of India, eastern province, and we have a big sweet tooth. I'm a Bengali. I really like a lot of sweets every day. And we have one particular sweet called Rasagolla. I think it's also familiar to you. Okay, so sugar syrup and mainly cottage cheese, a ball soaked in sugar syrup. It's Rasagolla. It's very famous. Now, there's a sweet maker, a confectioner in Bengal, who's proud that we are self-sufficient in Rasagolla making, the sweet making. Only the milk and the sugar we have to buy from the market. We are sustainable in Rasagolla making, but we have to buy the sugar and the milk and this. Now, how does it sound? Self-sustainability? This is exactly the situation of India's or South Asia's food security. All the seeds are coming from the Philippines, IR36, IR72, and so on. All the pesticides are coming from Europe and America. All the herbicide is from Monsanto company and Bayer company. The pump sets for irrigation, initially when I was started this, it was Tulu pump from Japan. Then it's Kirloskar, the British company, Kirloskar. Now it's all Chinese company, okay? So all the means and equipments and the seeds are all external, but we are self-sufficient. It's just like that confectioner's story. If that is the meaning of self-sustainability, where is the food security? That's the answer. Okay.
Thanks. We have some more questions. I think one online. Yeah. If you could, and then Lydia will take you.
So the first question from Barry Riran. Where is the Basuda farm located in India, and how to associate and collaborate with the Basuda farm?
Could you please be a bit louder?
Sorry. Where is the Basuda farm located in India? How to associate and collaborate with the Basuda farm?
So the question is how to associate themselves and collaborate with Basuda.
We actually invite anyone who's willing to lend their hands to our activity. Perhaps I missed saying you that we do not receive any funding support from government or corporations ever. It's not supported by any kind of financial, not even from NGOs. It's entirely supported by individual donors, and Anu included. All individual donors, not just money, also technical skills, software, many other kind of things, And so we also invite any one of you, not always as donor, your own involvement in the field as volunteer. We'll not be able to give you a salary kind of thing, but we'll take care of your food security. Okay, there, and we guarantee that every day you'll get a new variety of rice. That's one. And the second is that even if you are unable to go over there, you can send any kind of your expertise to share with us to benefit the seed bank, exchange with the farmers, not only financial, but technical knowledge, skills, anything.
How may they contact you?
I think it's given there, no?
We can
I think
send it out.
Yeah, yeah.
That's okay.
Which one was?
No, you don't have the. I can send out the link when you.
You can on the website also. If you just type Debal Deb and Basudha, you get the website. So, and I have my email ID. Yes.
We can send an email afterwards to all the participants on Zoom, so we can send the link.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yes.
That's a great idea.
Sure.
Lydia.
Thank you.
Oh, Vasanti, were you?
Thank you. Really interesting presentation and really insightful. I had two questions. One is about the recognition of farmers as innovators themselves. So you mentioned, farmers' involvement in coming up with some of these quite extraordinary varieties of rice, for example, the 3 kernel. So my question is around their awareness of how they are innovators, whether they're aware of that, the man or woman that you said was behind that particular rice variety. Are they aware, and are they how to protect them and their knowledge, and to credit their contribution adequately? So how are you? Your thoughts on how to do that properly based on his experience. And then my second question is around zero budget natural farming that everybody is a lot of people talking about in Brazil, in India and beyond. And my question is, how do you see that aligning with the principles and values that you talked about here? How do you see the connection? Any views you might have on this initiative would be quite interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The second question needs an elaborate answer, but the first question is easier, is that we have documented all the farmers' knowledge systems related to rice and other crop cultivation 2 ways. One is the property of all the properties, morphological, agronomic, and nutraceutical properties of each rice landrace. First, from the farmers themselves, as much as they know. Second, from our own cultivation and all these measurements that we take care scientifically. And third is the laboratory analysis of the biochemical properties and medicinal properties of this. All of these compiled. So far, the first and the only book on 35 characters, morphological characters of 460 rice varieties was published in 2000. And then second edition was 2005. And is still now is the only book on indigenous rice varieties and their morphological properties, which to my astonishment is very protectively kept in the library of International Rice Research Institute. And it's very restricted access. They didn't know when I visited there, they didn't know that I was the author. They said, no, it's very restricted access. Only the director and his recommendation is required to touch that book. They have 10 copies of my own book there. They have not yet, this is sad thing. I mean, on my side, it's a pride, but it's also sad thing that the international institution did not get this kind of knowledge base for the farmers, which should have been, I mean, decades before. So we are actually documenting all of this, and not only the scientific ones, but also the folk medicinal, like I shared with you this, the Garib Sal, the rice with silver, that the traditional knowledge system of the gastroenteric, medicine for that one, that is never published anywhere. So we have published that one, endorsing the verity of that practice by our own discovery of the silver particle. We explained why it is so effective. And we actually proved experimentally in the laboratory, published in the American Society of Chemistry. That's a very high prestigious journal. So now the mainstream society cannot ignore it. The main reason I am not actually still dissociated from scientific practices, I mean, as Anu has suggested, is that this is my only sword and shield to fight this monopoly industry. Okay, so when I say that I have published in Nature and Scientific American and all of these, first-rated science journals, they understand what I mean by science. And this is the only motive, because if we don't get any funding for that research, we don't get money from the research output, no commercial use at all. But this is the only purpose, to establish the scientific veracity of whatever we are finding, which we are actually giving voice to the people's knowledge, the farmers' knowledge, the farmers whom I call unknown, unnamed farmer scientists, okay, who discovered this triple grain rice variety, the only one in the world, who has invented this silver rice, the only one in the world, and so on and so forth. And there are, I just gave you an example of this, just a few. I would tell you this, each of these 1,480 varieties has a unique property, not shared by any other things. Each of them. Just one example is that, one of this, all over the publications of rice biology, it says rice has vitamin B1, which is very common, and hardly any. B4 and B6 is 0. We are published again in the first-rate journals of rice, showing that we have more than 600 varieties, which is very high content of B4 and B6, never published. So it's simply that, it's a kind of desideratum of extreme reductionistic approach. So if someone who has smelled basmati rice concludes rice is aromatic, every rice is aromatic, that's wrong. Okay, and whoever has not tasted basmati will say rice has no aroma. Either case is wrong, right? Because people have not examined all the other diversity, the rest of the diversity, which we have done, and given assertion and I would say validation of the people's knowledge. That's my contribution only. So that's the answer to your first question. The second is, how do I phrase this one? Can you make this rephrase of the question in a nutshell?
It was about zero budget natural farming.
Yeah, okay. I was actually going to this agroecology here. I never use this organic farming, never use the term, and definitely not zero budget natural farming. First of all, natural farming is an oxymoron. No farming is natural. As I explained, the first thing, the seeds, is not natural. All the crop seeds is a result of human innovation over 10,000 years. No humans, no domesticated animal. No humans, no crops. Okay? It never happens in nature at all. The cultivation itself is a human activity. Okay? There's no instance in nature that monkeys are cultivating, baboons are cultivating. It's only human activity of cultivation, conscious design of this planning, planting, transplanting, harvesting, characterization, the instruments and the implements that are used, all created by humans, and the seeds. So natural farming is an oxymoron. No farming is natural. It's totally human-made. Second, zero budget is also a false description, because the first requirement of this one, they say 2 cows. If you consider this, the cost of 2 cows, even draft animals, it's not zero budget. Okay, it's beyond the capacity of the ordinary farmer in India, for example. And so what I always find, and organic is another thing, by definition, organic means zero chemical. Okay, now if you grow IR36 with cow dung, or GM rice, BT cotton with cow dung, it's not organic in the sense that we talk, right? So that's why we make this a very objective term of agroecology, with number one is zero external input, and that eliminates all this kind of external thing, whether it's transgenics or hybrid or corporate seeds, okay, and the corporate other equipment. So agroecology is an established term. It's not only a science or application of ecology in agriculture, but also it's a movement and a philosophy. So agroecology is the term that we always use instead of confusing terms like this now. So there is no buts and ifs in these cases. So, and we are doing, what you intend, I fully appreciate that one. But the term we are using, agroecology, so it's very clear that we are not allowing any of these external inputs, and we are promoting that. So over the past 26 years now, we have this farm of just about less than 2 acres of land with 1,480. We have never ever used a single drop of agrochemical, herbicide, pesticide, fertilizer, not a single drop of irrigation by pump sets, entirely rain-fed with rainwater alone, no technology involved, no fossil fuel involved, entirely human and animal labor, draft animals. And we have never ever encountered any instance or incidents of pest attack, disease attack. Of course, they are all there, but the percentage of attack is minuscule. So it's almost not visible, because for every single pest insect, there are 22 different kinds of, they are enemies species wise, because it's a complete ecosystem. So invertebrates and vertebrates, different kinds of mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibia, insects, spiders, all of them, they take care of that. So that's the agroecology. And we are promoting that. We are giving trainings to all of them. Some agricultural students from Royal College of, what's that, in London?
Agriculture?
Yeah. They went there also for this kind of training too. So we give this training. It's not clustered knowledge. It's open.
Lydia, did you have a follow-up? Because we have some online as well. Oh, we have another one. Go ahead. Let's do this and then we'll go online.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for bringing us your energy on this important topic. I have two questions. One could be related to the role of the state in the community, like the context, if you could share some context, if they are supporting the farmers or they are just letting the corporations just do their things. And the other is like, if there are like groups transitioning to the agroecology, or all of the people over there are like radical, let's say like radical and just doing agroecology practices, or they are more resistance, that's just maybe using a little bit of some other agrochemical, but you just said no. Well, just a little bit about the context, please. Thank you very much.
Different, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, different procedure. There's no blanket prescription, one-line statement to solve all of this, but the principle is biodiverse agriculture, employment of biodiversity at every level. So it's not just pest control and disease control. We actually enhance, in some cases, we enhance some disease agents in order to develop the immunity in subsequent generations too. So these are all totally biodiversity-based solutions, and there's no single procedure. And there are also some kind of engineering that we also employ. We call it ecological engineering, in the sense that we have, perhaps you're aware that there's a kind of leaf-cutting insects, leaf-cutting ants, which actually stitch the leaves, and they are predatory ants. And so whenever we see that there's a kind of little bit above limit number of stem borers, an insect which actually bores in the stem of this, that it dries up. So there's above 1 or 2 in 10,000 is nothing. But if it's a bit considerably high, we don't take recourse to any of these. So we harvest 2 or 3 nests of that ant, leaf-cutting ant. We harvest the whole nest. They're all angry because it's being transported. And we put them in that rice field, in that patch. So all these in the army ants, come out, and they climb up and down each stem of the rice plant. They chew up every single insect that they come across. And within about 10 minutes, all these stem borers, the entire population is eradicated within 10 minutes. So after that, they find no other, then they go to other nearby trees and form another colony. So this is, it's a kind of my enemy's enemy is my friend. That's the same principle. And that we consider, and we didn't see because of the lack of time, the the ecological architecture itself. I mean, architecture of the farm, not building. So that constitutes different tiers of trees and shrubs and herbs and grasses. We never ever eliminate a single blade of grass. We don't consider any plant as weeds because that's unscientific. Weed is a term given by cultivators, agriculturists. In science, there's no group of plant called weed. Okay, what's a weed? Weed is which is not useful to me at the time. Okay, so if you are growing wheat and you get a rice inside that wheat field, rice is the weed in your wheat field, right? Now, how can this weedicide, herbicide, chemical identify which one is weed and which is not? It's we decide, right? So, and that is an engineering. We actually employ different kinds of gases. We actually enhance the growth of certain grasses to eliminate or suppress the outgrowth of another species of grass. So this is the ecological engineering based thing. So that's how we make it.
Thanks. Let's go to online question.
Yeah, so next online question. We are wondering what makes trading indigenous rice varieties illegal in India and who enforces that?
What makes indigenous rice variety trading illegal and who enforces?
It's a difficult question to answer because we have almost decided to not give any more training in rice conservation techniques. The main reason is that it's very negative. I'm talking is that over the past 22 years, we gave trainings to more than 800 people free of cost, at my cost. And the result is only 4 people out of 820 who are following that, these methods of characterization and genetic purity maintenance. So this really is very frustrating for me at this age. And I now consider kind of, surrender to the fate, evolutionary fate of the rice varieties. They will eventually die. I cannot, the varieties that I collected in 1996, for example, I extended that lifespan by another 30 years or 40 years. I cannot expand my lifespan by another century. How can I expand their own lifespans, for all its 1,000 varieties? So I leave it to the evolutionary fate, mainly because I'm aging, my stamina is falling, and so it's honest. But if someone is really interested, unfortunately, most of these people show much interest, but after that, it's so rigorous, they actually abandon it. That's what happened with these 800 people. But if someone is still showing interest, I will definitely give the training, but not on my own accord. They have to come over and take up.
I think the question was more about illegality of.
No, the question was about this, not only the legality, but there's the
trading of seeds. Is it illegal in India for farmers to trade seeds with other farmers?
No,
it's not.
Not at all.
So it's not illegal, but it's not encouraged either.
Because people don't think it's necessary in the first place. So people don't know this. That's the main thing.
Okay, next question. To combat capitalism, degrowth is often a solution people champion to appreciate what capitalism has given us, but wean off of it because we recognize there are limits to infinite growth. What does a seed degrowth look like? I study at the University of South Florida, interested from your answer from an agriculture policy standpoint.
Interesting. Degrowth question.
Yeah. I always try to answer this kind of question from the community viewpoint. So whenever we think that, this wealth of this genetic diversity is not mine, it's not my family property, I'm only a custodian of this wealth of genetic diversity, which was created by unnamed, unknown pharma scientists. People have forgotten, the government has forgotten, the development paradigm has forgotten. And so my task is that I'm not going to find the names of those inventors, but at least to keep in custody of myself and the other farmers who take the seeds alive. So that's the custodian function that I'm serving. I hope I continue to do that till my death. But that's if the farmers, there are many farmers who are interested, of course, And so far, I told you about 17,000 farmers have taken the seeds. Not all of them are maintaining this, but there are certain farmers, especially in the tribal areas, who are very serious about it and they are very proud of it. And none of them ask this question about the market price of the produce. None of them ask about the yield, how much yield, how many kg more yield than the high yielding variety or whatever. They simply know that this is the only variety which can survive in this drought prone area, which no other variety can survive. This is the only variety which can survive in this saline water, in seawater. And therefore they go for it, don't care for this the market price or whatever. This brings to the question from the consumers. I mean, I think the implicit question about that was the marketing. Unless you find a market for that one, how can they survive? The problem is that you consider ourselves as the consumers. If we go to a market, do we ask, give me an insect-resistant variety? Give me a salt-tolerant variety? Give me a drought-tolerant variety? No. We simply go for red rice or white rice or aromatic rice and so on and so forth. So it's completely, but those are like the salt tolerance or drought tolerance are the life and death question for the farmers there, which has no value in the consumer's market. We don't give a damn for that one. So we don't really go for this market in the modern sense of market. So the farmers should not care for the market in New York or London and what the price they might fetch. They must have to consider their own. This is how this 10,000 years of agriculture has survived before this external market evolved for this one. Of course, there was market, the country markets, which in India we call HAT. It's weekly market where the farmer producers themselves come and sell, which is now it's a fashionable statement of farmers market. And now it's an uppity thing to attend this farmers market, and we get this, the farmer market stamped with the barcode. But the original idea is for 10,000 years it's been viable. So it's not, so the farmers do not consider that this will be sold at a higher price at London. That's why we are growing in Brighton. That was not the old, okay? So we are actually promoting that one. It's localization. Localized market is totally localized, and producers market where the price is also controlled by the producers themselves. If I'm happy with you, I may give it at £1. If I'm angry with you, I don't like it, even at £100, I'm not going to sell it. So the price is not determined by the share market, okay? Or what, some soccer player scored a goal and the price goes up. It's not, doesn't depend on that one. So that's my answer to that and how we make that.
I think the question was even a little bit more, and I actually would like to hear the answer to it, was about, degrowth. Maybe, Tom, you could, somebody else could rephrase it better perhaps, but the idea that, capitalism and advanced capitalism can be resisted by subscribing to a degrowth strategy.
Yeah.
What would this mean for seeds and the kind of work that you're doing?
I already answered this too. One is that the sovereignty over seeds is not by the corporation, not by government, not by any other authority. It's entirely in the hands of the farms of the farmers. And the second is outside the market, the hegemony. That's what I was describing. Once I'm outside the market hegemony, which is decided by the share market and how much money we get it, that's why I gave it this. The farmer knows that I am the arbiter of the price. I decide for this particular variety. If you don't like, don't take it. And if you want it, you have to come to me, not to the London supermarket, okay? So you have to come to my farm or the local market. So that's the kind of, and I'm very fortunate to have visited 3 degrowth towns, transition towns in England. I was invited by these, and they are doing exactly that one. And they're completely, out of this market, totally farmers market, governed by the producers. They set the price completely away from this any kind of diktats of the larger market price of the British government. So much so that they have established in Bristol and Totnes, they have established their own pounds. Totnes pound and Bristol pound, and not the GB pound. And as because they are not recognized by the mainstream economy, you cannot save that Bristol pound in your bank. And because you cannot save it, perhaps it will take a longer time to explain the economy. Essentially, that once it is not saved in the bank, it's continuously in circulation. Once the currency is continuous circulation, there's no scope of rise in price. So over the past 20 years, the price of loaf of bread in Totnes or in Bristol remains exactly the same, while the price of bread has increased in other places, I mean, entire national government or any other things, cookies and others, and the localization. So all the things that I actually hinted upon this, these localization of production, localization of consumption, zero market dependence, zero external inputs dependence, and away from this, the market dependence for money. So value replacing price. These are all the essential elements of degrowth. And I'm very fortunate that I can refer to British transition towns as the paradigms for this, flesh and blood transition towns, they are in existence. And I learned a lot, and they invited me because in my book, I actually predicted what would happen when you withdraw from circulation, withdraw from the bank. It's continuous circulation. They said, what you predicted in your book is exactly that. So you please come over. And I said, what I predicted is made into flesh by yourselves. So I'm the one who said, okay, you teach us and we'll teach you. And so it was another moneyless transaction. They gave all the cost for my transport and living, and I mean food and everything. And I gave all these trainings to them for free of cost. It was again a barter, moneyless barter system. This is degrowth.